and Slade brings in Noddy Holder $5 million a year.
I don't know if it's 5 million. Well, people pick these figures
I
out.
don't know I know that's the story.
It was 5 million, but it would bring him a great deal of money every year. Yeah. I don't know where they got that figure. I mean, people always put in the papers that Searchers have sold 30 million records. Well, I think someone said it once, and everyone believes that now.
Yeah.
If they sold 30 million, we haven't seen the royalties from 30. But you can't take these facts and these figures for fact. No. But rest assured that Slade record will make a lot of money every year.
Every Christmas, isn't it? It's like I heard a story, and it was told to me by a member of the of Manfred Mann, and apparently Paul Jones was over in America a few years ago, and he found the guy who wrote Do Wah Diddy, and he said to him, what does the song mean? And the guy turned around and said, it means I can have a damn good holiday every year.
Yeah, that's a bit like the American Pie thing. Don McLean, people say, what does American Pie mean? He says, that means I don't have to work anymore.
And I like that. I thought it was a great story. I don't know how true the Manfred Mann one is, but apparently it's Paul Jones.
Yeah, no, I think people, stories are meant to amuse people. They're not necessarily true.
True, no. I mean, and that amused me, actually. So, I mean, they say you're one of the hardest working bands in Britain.
Probably the hardest. I don't know anyone who has more dates with us. In fact, I've counted up the dates. This year is a very quiet year for us. We've had more time off than we ever have because we're not doing a package tour this year. And it's really quite strange and quite refreshing because we've got some leisure time, like a couple of weeks at a time. And I counted them up. We're doing 133 dates this year. Whereas normally we would do 150 to 200, which is a hell of a lot. I don't know any other bands that do that kind of amount.
I mean, that's one. If you do 150, that's roughly one every day and every other day, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's pretty normal. That's been pretty normal for us for the last few decades.
So
this really 133 feels very leisurely to us, and I suppose it's quite a nice, refreshing treat as age gets on, and you do want a bit more time to yourself. So I've no objection to working a little bit less at all. But next year we're going to be back to the lorry loads of days.
Well, I think you have to do 250 to make up for it. Your fans are going to be moaning.
Well, exactly. Well, they moan now when you don't come to their area or something like that.
I know it's quite. Sometimes I go on these like forums for bands before I speak to the people like yourself, and it's interesting. You see the fans there, and they're saying, "Oh, I live in so and so, Melton Mowbray, for instance, off the top of my head. Oh, you've not been there for 5 years, and they know exactly the last time you played there."
Yeah, we had someone write into the website the other day complaining that there have been very few South of England dates for people, and to our agent, please would he get dates in the South of England?
Well, we've got a couple of dates. We talk about them at the end, locally.
You're listening to Seclo Sounds, the community radio station for Milton Keynes.
So, is there going to be any new albums or anything coming out from the Searchers?
I don't think so. When we're talking about new albums, in all seriousness, I talk about studio albums on general release. We do actually produce albums of our own, compilation things for sale at the venues every now and again. But I don't count those as genuine releases in the way that, our last studio album that went unreleased through a major record company was in 1989. That was one called Hungry Hearts. You've got to accept that in the end it's your back catalogue that they are listening to. They still want to hear again and again. And much as you try, and nice as it would be, music is as much about selling young bodies to other young bodies as it is about music. It's about looks and youth. And the older you get, you can still have a freak hit, and you can still have a good selling album, but the chances are less and less that you will be able to get one, and the chances of a record company investing the money in to you for the limited possibility that you have becomes less and less. So I wouldn't think there's a lot of chance, although never say never again.
No, that's good. So, I mean, is it, you say you sell some of the venues. Are they like live recordings you've done or things like that?
We do live recordings, and we've used Spencer. Spencer he's been our lead singer for the last 30 years now. And he has his own studio, so we've done a few things in his.
Okay. Is there anyone you wish you'd worked with?
Elvis. I don't really wish I worked for him, because I mean we would be of absolutely no count. But I would love to have seen Elvis on stage.
So, do you know what? So would I. And
I mean, that's the one thing I missed.
I went.
Changed everything for me.
Yeah, I went a few years ago, a couple of Christmases ago, to Hawaii, and I went to the hotel. It's called Coco Palms, where they shot Blue Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
And I met, and you know, if any Elvis fans know Blue Hawaii, at the very end he gets married and he comes down on the boat down the river. And I met the guy who plays the ukulele for Elvis. He's
Right.
85 years of age, I think, something like that. He's over 80 anyhow. And he played for myself and my wife on, I think it was Boxing Day a couple of years ago. And I tell you what, that made the back of my hairs on the back of my neck stand on end.
Yeah, well, I did the tour of Graceland a few years ago.
Did you?
And that was fantastic. I mean, he was so iconic, and you know, the imagery of Elvis and the sheer remoteness of him. That is a unique quality to have, and he just changed music forever.
I think he did.
I mean, we've worked with the Beatles, we've toured with the Rolling Stones, we toured with loads, so many people, but Elvis would have been it. I mean, my first tour of America with the band, and I tell this story on stage, that we went out there in September '64 to do 7 days of concerts at the Fox Theatre in Brooklyn, 6 shows every day.
Oh, ouch.
And the bill was The Searchers, Dusty Springfield, Millie, Marvin Gaye, The Supremes, Martha and the Vandellas, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, The Temptations, The Contours, Little Anthony, The Ronettes, The Shangri-Las, the Dovells, Jay and the Americans, and the New Beats.
So nobody really decent on the bill then.
No one at all to speak of. It was such a poverty-stricken bill.
I mean, do you just imagine seeing that kind of bill now?
You wouldn't get it, because most of those people Marvin Gaye would be doing arenas if he was still alive.
Oh, yeah. Well,
his own.
I mean, Martha Reeves is still performing. She came.
She was on the other night. Apparently she had some trouble in her show, I believe, the other night.
I believe she was at the Royal Albert Hall, wasn't she, the other couple of weeks?
No, I think she was in somewhere in Greenwich.
Oh, was she?
There was a fight and a bit of racial abuse happened in the audience. They stopped the show for about 15 minutes.
I know she was coming over here. I've never had the pleasure of seeing Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. I've seen the Supremes, or the version of the Supremes. I've seen the Temptations, and they're still. I mean, there's only one of the original Temptations left. I had the great pleasure of seeing the Four Tops when they were over here, and when they were together as the four guys. There's only one of them, I'm afraid, left now.
I think last time I saw the Four Tops, it was the one top.
Yeah, well, there's only one of them left. The rest of them are sadly no longer with us. I had the pleasure of seeing all 4 of them when before Levi died, in middle 80s, I think it was late 80s.
Yeah, Levi, they had a great singer the night I saw them, but the only good thing was his voice didn't actually remotely sound like Levi's. It was a fantastic soul voice, but Levi had a very distinctive, hoarse, rough quality. You could tell straight away.
Well, of course, he was cousin of the great Jackie Wilson as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
He was Jackie
Fantastic,
Wilson.
And Jackie Wilson was great, great.
Well, truly great man. Anyway, do you have any sort of unfulfilled ambitions? Anything you wish you'd ever done and never did?
No. Well, we've done Wembley Stadium with Cliff, so that was pretty big, and we've done the Araneta Coliseum in Manila. So we've done all the pretty big venues. The last unfulfilled ambition would be to have some other kind of hit record, be it an album or a single. That would be nice. There has always been talk for ages about us being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I do believe that someone from there is coming over in October to actually interview. I don't know whether that's a preamble to that, but I suppose that would be quite exciting.
That would be nice. I mean, there's been, should we say, worse bands have been inducted into that, I can tell you. Have you ever played Glastonbury?
No. You know, and people keep on about that. Why don't you play Glastonbury? Well, they've never asked us, but I have a feeling it would be a terrible disappointment, because if we played Glastonbury, I doubt if they would put us on the main stage, and we would get no attention whatsoever, and we'd just be mired in muck and grime for a weekend with virtually nothing. Really, it would be a big disappointment at the end of it. I really feel that's what will happen. It's not like Bassie doing Glastonbury. It's not even like the Kinks doing Glastonbury, because Ray Davies was such an iconic songwriter and a much bigger deal. in a lasting way.
Yeah.
I think we'd get tucked away in some tiny stage somewhere and thought, what are we doing here?
Okay. What would you say has been the highlight of the career so far?
There are several things. Well, there are about three things I always mention. One is the tour, the shows at the Brooklyn Fox. That is incredibly memorable. Another one of the 2 days at Wembley Stadium with Cliff Richard in 1989 when we supported him on his 30th anniversary. I mean, 80,000 people on each day for 2 days. That was incredible. And the other one would be the Royal Variety Show in 1981 being presented to the Queen.
Yeah. Well, Cliff's still going. I mean, he's got a brand new album out in a couple of weeks' time.
Yep, and I'm going to see him at the Albert Hall.
Are you?
The office always sort me out with tickets, and I always go there and have a word and have a chat with them afterwards.
I had a great pleasure of playing his single about 3 weeks ago, before the BBC got their sweaty hands on it.
All right.
I was sent. It's called Golden. It's a lovely single, and I know the BBC are now playing it because they had this thing about they wouldn't play Cliff Richard. You know,
No,
why not?
I went to see. I always go see Cliff when I can. I went along, and we were in Australia 2 years ago, and where I was on, we had a night off when he was at the Opera House, so I got in touch, and he sorted out tickets for me. I went to the sound check in the afternoon. We had an absolutely beautiful meal, this wonderful catering. Meanwhile, before the show, and then I watched the whole show again after that, and then champagne in the dressing room afterwards. He's a very hospitable lad.
Yeah, I saw the last time I saw Cliff live was at Nebworth. He was at Nebworth one year in front of a load of people, and he went down a storm.
Oh, he would.
Absolutely amazing.
Professional.
And everybody I spoke.
Some very bad times, obviously, at the moment with
all
the controversy that's breaking on.
I think
that's
rubbish.
A load of absolute rubbish.
Yeah, I know people who know him. I know people like I've had Peter Howarth on the show, and I've had people like Geordie Marshall who know him, and they've all said it's absolute drivel. You know,
that's not Cliff's style in any way whatsoever.
Not at all. What would you like to be remembered for, or the Searchers? What do you think the Searchers should be remembered for?
For having some kind of mild influence, at least, on the world of pop, and it seems that we have had this kind of influence on people like Bruce Springsteen and Tom Petty and things like that. In fact, a friend of mine from New York the other day sent an email saying that he'd just been listening to E Street Radio, and Steve Van Zandt was one of the guests on it, and they played a song by Springsteen called, I think it's The Little Things My Baby Does. I'd never heard it before. And at the end of it, Stevie said that Bruce took his influence for the riffs from the Searchers' record of Have You Ever Loved Somebody, which was our tiniest and last hit. And that was an incredible thing to say, incredible thing to think that he even listened to a hit as small as that of ours, you know.
Well, it's a great endorsement, also. But the thing is, I go over to the States a lot, and I know you do. But the British invasion, and it's still happening, was amazing, and they love British music.
Yeah, they do. We do it occasionally now, not that much.
We still, I know, yeah. I mean, well, we've had a bit of success over the last, not perhaps the last few years. I mean, I think the last band was probably Dire Straits or maybe the Police. But I mean, they flew over to America and they had hits over there before they had hits in Britain, which is very strange. But I mean, I think it's very hard to crack America because they have this pigeonhole radio, which I find very. I find that very bizarre, and it's
a wide space to cover.
Big time. I mean, you can drive for an hour and go nowhere, basically.
The goodness knows Cliff has tried so much.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
probably the biggest.
We did Las Vegas last year.
Did you?
A couple of days there, and we've done that before, but we don't get across there much these days. But I love it. I go there a lot, to see shows in New York and just hang about for a while.
Do you? Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great. So are you a bit of a theatre goer then, Frank?
Very much so, yeah.
What sort of shows do you like?
I like straight drama as much as I like musicals. I try and tend to avoid going to musicals all the time because that's what people tend to do. So I was in New York just a couple of months ago, and I was only there for a week, and I caught two shows. I did go and see a musical. I went to see Kinky Boots, which has just come over here. And that was very good in the Broadway tradition. I had a good night. But also went to see another play called Hand to God, which is a straight drama, which is very freaky, a bit creepy, incredibly funny, very rude. It's one of the best things I've seen since the Book of Mormon.
So it's a bit like the Book of Mormon, is it?
Well, it's a non-musical Book of Mormon. It's not.
It?
it's not the same kind of story, but it's that kind of dark humour. A lot of very, very bad language. It's actually about a puppet group at a church social club.
Okay.
With all with the things that are going on between the four people there, and one of the main characters, Puppet, takes on a life of its own.
Okay, so it's a bit like Avenue Q, then, is it?
Yes, and I'm not sure it wasn't